The sacrifice is a popular trope in media where a character puts themselves in a situation where death is guaranteed to ensure someone or multiple someones can get out safely. There is a reason this is a really popular trope, especially in zombie media. It's a great way to add emotion to a scene, no matter how cheap said emotion might be. Nothing hits you in the feels more than watching a character sacrifice themselves to save a younger or weaker one. And as with most tropes, it also carries over to the Sonic.exe multiverse. Hell, you sacrifice Scratch and Grounder to make sure Eggman gets out of Spirits of Hell. With how Sonic.exe and its whole mythos is set up, there is a lot of potential for some moments where a sacrifice is worth it. But in Asyms on Roblox, there's a very specific character that is always set as the sacrifice character. One that feels kind of out of left field until you realize it almost thematically is perfect in every way. And that character is Metal Sonic. Be it in Outcome Memories or The Disaster, Metal Sonic has always kind of filled the role of a sacrifice character, the one that gives his life to the cause, and yet, the way both games go about it is completely different. And that's what I want to talk about today, because in my eyes there is an obviously superior version, both in lore and gameplay mechanics. If you liked the video, like it. If you disliked it, dislike it, subscribe, and join my community Discord, and let's not waste any more time, and hop to the video. Now, before I can compare the two and give my reasoning as to why one is better than the other, I have to talk about them independently, and first I will talk about The Disaster's Metal Sonic. Metal in The Disaster is a strange character. He has a lot more HP, he is incredibly annoying, and is oftentimes the backbone of the team, and yet he also probably has the weakest stun in the game, and his entire kit revolves around keeping the EXE as close to you as physically possible and away from your team. After all, his two abilities are literally designed to either force the EXE and yourself away from the team, or drag the EXE towards you to draw aggro. However, this either comes at the risk of yourself. Again, dragging a 65 damage Hulk towards you to save a cream is noble, but it's also probably going to get you killed in the long run. And of course, dragging the EXE to yourself and away from the survivors is also a plan that needs to be calculated accordingly, because, well, your stun after dragging them away is the weakest in the entire game, so you can't realistically keep him nearby your survivors as you're charging, or they'll break out fast and probably get someone killed. So you have to put yourself in danger to ensure that doesn't happen. His entire game plan is calculated self-sacrifice, which makes him pretty unique already. Every other character revolves more or less staying around your team. Not Metal, at least not while you're trying to use your abilities. Of course, this is a very risky game plan, because you're putting yourself on the line so often, it's going to end with you getting absolutely murdered unless you're like the god of juking. However, getting unironically shit on gives you access to one more move, self-destruct. See, this is a move that further reinforces the noble sacrifice that Metal has apparently been thrust into. To click it is to seal your fate. You're put on about a 5-second timer and then you literally explode, stunning the EXE for the longest time in the game. This obviously kills you, but buys your team an extreme amount of time, with not only distance, but time as well. That was kind of redundant, but whatever. As it is a choice, you can usually try to stall it out longer. It really is a last-ditch effort move to buy your team time to give your life to make sure they can get out. The long stun contrasts with the rest of his kit well, because he really isn't an effective stunner otherwise. Again, the EXE gets up pretty much the second you're done charging. It is a meaningful move, it's substantial to the game that both hurts and helps your team depending on how early it happens, and other nuances. Again, Metal is the backbone of the team a lot of the time, so having him die early is typically not very good. And with all of this compounded, it even fits with the lore of The Disaster. See, in the original TD, we don't talk about TDE, Sonic is dead. Sonic is Colossus. So it makes sense that Metal is now the more Sonic type character, because he did his job. He surpassed Sonic. Sonic is dead. He's not. So his design even reflects this, with his eyes being a more protective green over the more intimidating red that we're known for. It's honestly kind of genius, and out of all the characters in TD, I feel like he was certainly the most well designed. And now we move on to Outcome Memories. Outcome Memories has a very different design philosophy. That is, instead of being a true sacrifice character, he's more a frontliner with the side effect that he gives away HP every time he stuns. This is fairly fine because he does stun for a really long time, but it's not really a sacrifice because it's nullified by his ability to self-heal, or otherwise get away after stunning. Again, it's a very long stun. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be able to get away. It's like 8 seconds. I think it's the best stun in the game, outside of maybe Knuckles' Fury Punch, but that takes time to wind up. Plus, with stun stacking in the game as well, you can 9 times out of 10 have your HP back if you have an Eggman before they get back up. Meaning that unlike Metal Sonic in the Disaster, there really isn't a meaningful sacrifice to be made. Which, you know, is fine, but it's not really the same design philosophy. Oftentimes, the best way to play him is as an ambush instead of a sacrifice. You hop in out of nowhere, stun, heal, rinse, and repeat until you either die or need to run away with your destructive charge. Not saying this is a bad thing, of course, but it doesn't really give you as much to work with, really. And yes, while you can sacrifice metal if your HP goes below 10 during a charge, in my opinion that doesn't really count. A lot of the time it is out of your control because Outcome Memories is a very, very buggy game. And more often than not, the sacrifice just really is not worth it. Especially since all but one of the killers have some way to get back to the survivors really quickly. 2011X has God's Trickery and Invisibility. Fleetway can literally fly, and Colossus can climb and has pretty good mobility in terms of his charge. Because Metal Sonic, when he dies, gives time back on the timer, oftentimes the killer can just be back on a different survivor before any meaningful time was wasted. Which just undermines the whole sacrifice to begin with. You didn't really buy time, you didn't even really delay the inevitable, you died and didn't really give anything meaningful back. The stun really is more of a niche thing more than anything else because it doesn't damage Fleetway. Barely is a stun, it's only like a 3 or 4 second stun. Overall, it just doesn't really add much to Metal Sonic's kit other than just make him more annoying than he already is, which he doesn't need help with because it's Metal Sonic in Outcome Memories. There are TikTok edits of him for a reason. This, however, is not the case in the Disaster, because in the Disaster, the killer actually does not get time for killing the survivors, or for survivors dying as a whole. So Metal Sonic dying and giving up his life to sacrifice to have that long stun is not as much of a problem in the Disaster, because that stun doesn't give the killer more time. So it's more meaningful in that way. So the sacrifice in Outcome Memories doesn't feel meaningful or warranted because it doesn't give you anything really substantial other than just being annoying. The sacrifice just doesn't feel meaningful anyway because the metal just explodes when you die anyway, so exploding when you are charging doesn't really give you much of anything to work with. Especially because in Outcome Memories, Metal Sonic is absolutely a character that you want to keep as long as possible, so him sacrificing himself like that is actually a huge detriment to your team 9 times out of 10. So generally what will happen is you'll see Metal Sonic charge into a wall instead of taking the EXE away from your team so that he can run to Eggman and heal instead of the sacrifice. Metal Sonic in Outcome Memories is not a sacrifice character, is what I'm trying to say. That isn't to say that Metal Sonic cannot be played more as a role of sacrifice, but his design philosophy is fundamentally different. It's not necessarily a bad thing, of course. Metal Sonic in OM is really fun to play. He just doesn't have the spark that the original version did. Something about a metal robot having the sentience to realize, yeah, sacrificing myself for the team is beneficial, and doing so is kind of hard-hitting, especially when the character is mimicking Sonic and is now the real Sonic because Sonic is dead, and doing what Sonic would have done, even though that goes against literally everything we know about metal. It's kind of good, man. There's something about the juxtaposition of an Eggman Empire character sacrificing themselves to save Mobians. I don't know, it's just nice. It correlates nice in my brain. Not to say that it's the most emotional thing in the world. It's a Roblox game and the characters look like this. It can still cause some head turns at times. Or maybe that's just me and I'm too attached to these characters now. I could be the tism. Anyway, that's just my whole take on the whole metal thing. I prefer the TD version because it feels unique in a way no other Asym character really does, but maybe you prefer the Outcome Memories version, and you know, it's okay to be wrong. Anyway, if you liked the video, like it. If you disliked it, dislike it, subscribe, and join my community Discord, and I hope to see you in the next one.